Hi, welcome or welcome back to Books and Bocadillos. My name is Maria Andrea, and today I want to share an announcement video with you. So, I've been kind of hinting or mentioning this in previous videos, and I hadn't had the time to just sit and unfold it all and unpack it all here with you. So, I want to tell you about a book club project that I want to host in 2025. So, in the year 2025, starting in January, I'll be hosting a book club. This book club is for me and it is for you. It is for anybody who wants to read along with some of the books that I'm reading and engage in conversation with myself and with others about these books. A little bit about the books that I've chosen. So, the name of the book club is my channel name, Books and Bocadillos, and the books that I am curating for these lists that I hope will be ongoing. I'm really, really excited about this project. I hope it is a great reading year for this book club in 2025. And I look forward to another year because it was so hard to pare down. There are so many books on my TBR, so many authors I want to discover. And I just couldn't contain all of my excitement and all of my goals in one year. So I did the best that I could. I pared down. I picked one book a month, and I'm going to tell you all about it. The books were picked because they are written by a Latine, Latinx, Latino author. For the year 2025, I believe most, if not all of the books, I think all of the books that I chosen were written by a Latina author. Um, it doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. There are some books that I'll be reading that are not part of the book club that are written by Latino, Latinx, Latine authors. But it just so happened that the way that everything kind of fell into place, it all just happened to be all women for 2025, and I'm okay with that because I'm all for reading more work published by women. Um, so yeah, how did this project come to? Okay, I went to a conference in the month of November. The first full week in November, I was in Dallas for a conference. I was sitting in a workshop, in a seminar session about immigration. And I was listening to the presenters present on policy in the state of Texas that um, policies that are hostile to immigrants and to people of color. So I thought, as my wheels were turning, I thought, like, what is my work to do? It's not to despair because of an election. It's not to despair because of a policy or a governor or a whomever is making things difficult, or making decisions that I may not agree with or may affect me and people I care about. So I I decided that one of the best ways that I could contribute to conversation is to read and talk about what I'm reading. So, with that said, I am going to be reading some books and you're invited to come along and we can have some conversations. Let's talk about these books. So for the month of January, I picked Valeria Luiselli's Lost Children Archive. I have my index cards. I'm prepared. Or so I think I am. So in the month of January, we're reading Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli. Lost Children Archive was published in 2019 by Vintage. As I was reading blurbs, because I love blurbs, I came across a quote, a phrase, in which Valeria Luiselli is described as a collagist of a writer. In this novel, Valeria Luiselli takes inspiration from Ezra Pound's Cantos, Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. Another blurb said this is a twist on the great American road trip novel. This novel is preceded by an essay that Valeria Luiselli wrote titled Tell Me How It Ends, an essay in 40 questions. This book can be tagged as domestic fiction, road trip fiction, immigration and migration themes, and political fiction. So if you're up for the ride and you want to read Valeria Luiselli's Lost Children Archive, which I have right here, please join me in January for this book. I'm so excited for this read. I keep reading blurbs and I just can't contain myself. I just noticed that the front blurb here is by Tommy Orange. I love Tommy Orange. And Tommy Orange wrote, impossibly smart, full of beauty, heart, and insight. Everyone should read this book. So you should read this book. Tell me, will you be reading this book with me in January? In February, we'll be reading Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. And this is the book, Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. Olga Dies Dreaming was published in 2022 by Flatiron Books. It is set in New York City. It's about a Puerto Rican family. There's a Hulu adaptation, so I cannot wait to watch the Hulu adaptation. Have you seen it? What do you think? Have you read the book? I'm interested in your thoughts. Quote, this is a story that examines political corruption, familial strife, and the very notion of the American dream, all while asking what it really means to weather a storm. I believe that there is a storm, a hurricane, that this book centers around. And I like the notion of the American dream. I love American dream exploration in novels. So this ticks all the boxes for me. This book can be tagged as satire, dark comedy, domestic fiction, urban fiction, and political fiction. That is Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. In the month of March, we will be reading The Distant Marvels by Chantel Acevedo. The Distant Marvels was published in 2015 by Europa. I love Europa. The story of a lifetime told in the eye of a hurricane. So this is another novel that centers around a hurricane. The main character is Maria Sirena, and she is a lectora and cuentista. A lectora or a cuentista, they are the people that sit with the workers at cigar factories. So there are so many steps to making cigars in Cuba. It's set in Cuba. So at the the places where the people are gathered to assemble the cigars, because it's such tedious and it's laborious. They have lectoras, so people who come in and sit and they'll read a novel um, and tell stories. And so the main character of this novel is a lectora, which I think is really cool and interesting. The Distant Marvels has the epic scope of a contemporary Gone with the Wind and a faith in the power of storytelling equal to Martel's Life of Pi. This book is set in Cuba. It can be tagged as a family saga, and it's historical fiction. This book came onto my radar through the podcast, A Strong Sense of Place. This is one of the picks for their Cuba episode, and the way that they talked about it was that this is such a good book that it teaches you about Cuban history. I'm a little lacking in my Cuban history, so I think I'm going to learn a lot from this novel. Last year, I read a book with Chatty at Chatty the Mad Chatter, and we read title of the book, Women of Salt. And it was set in, well, it had two storylines, and one storyline was in Cuba, and that storyline was not enough. I wanted more of the book to be set in Cuba and be told about like the past, the Cuban past. So I'm really excited for this one. In April, we'll be reading The Invisible Life of Euridice Gusmao by Marta Batalha, translated by Eric M.B. Becker. This book was published in 2017 by One World Publications. It's set in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in the 1940s. There's an adaptation of this novel on Amazon and Freebie. I'm also looking forward to this adaptation. Quote, a darkly funny comic debut, bursting with vibrant Brazilian spirit and unforgettable characters, a jubilant novel about the emancipation of women. This book also came onto my radar through A Strong Sense of Place. It was one of their book picks for their Brazil episode. And this book can be tagged as literary fiction, domestic fiction, and women's fiction. For the month of May, I've selected Night at the Fiestas by Kirsten or Kristin? I think it's Kristin, but Kirsten Valdez Quade. Published in 2015 by W.W. Norton & Co. This story is set in northern New Mexico. It kind of gives me the vibes of the setting of maybe a little bit of Death Comes to the Archbishop and a little bit of Woman of Light. Both of these books that I read this year were set in New Mexico. So I really enjoyed those two books, and I'm really looking forward to going back to New Mexico. A beautifully rendered debut about living in a land shaped by love, loss, and violence. So this is another debut. And it's a short story collection. It's one of the short stories from this collection evolved into the novel The Five Wounds, written by Kirsten Valdez Quade. So this is short stories, and it is Mexican American fiction. It's also my birthday month, and it was Fiestas, and I really love reading short stories, and I thought like Fiestas, I definitely want to have the vibe of a fiesta during my birthday month. So I don't know. We shall see. I hope it's a fun collection to read through. In the month of June, June is Pride Month. So for Pride Month, I selected The Grief Keeper by Alexandra Villasante. The Grief Keeper was published in 2019 by Putnam. This book was banned in Texas. I live in Texas, so I was like shaking my head. It was a winner for the Lambda Literary Award in 2020. This is the story about two sisters from El Salvador, Marisol and Gabi. They flee from an immigration detention center on the U.S. border. A timely, heartfelt, speculative narrative about healing, faith, and freedom. This book can be tagged as young adult, science fiction, emigration and immigration fiction, romance, and LGBT. I believe it was banned for the LGBT themes. In the month of July, this year I discovered the event Giallo July, and I love Giallo July. I love reading thrillers, having like a designated time for that. And I am looking forward to it again in 2025. I hope it happens. And with Giallo July in mind, I chose Untamed Shore by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Now, Silvia Moreno Garcia is like the queen of mashup genres, and I love her for that. Untamed Shore was published in 2020 by Penguin Random House in the US and Quercus in the UK. It is a dark coming-of-age noir, quote, Patricia Highsmith-like tale of grifts and con artists. Another blurb, that's what Crime Time blurbed. Book page says it is a fever dream of a thriller. This book is set in Baja California, Mexico in 1979. This book can be tagged as thriller, historical fiction, mystery suspense, noir, Bildungsroman, and crime. And that is Untamed Shore by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I don't know why, but in my head I have the idea that somewhere I read Silvia Moreno Garcia said this is one of her favorite books she's written. Why do I think that? Why that's in my head. I don't know if I read that somewhere or heard an interview, but I'm really curious to read it. I know she has a lot of love for this book, and I think it was one of the books that was translated to Spanish recently. But the original text is in English. In the month of August, the selection is Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope Perez. Now, I hosted August for the first time this year, and I want to do that again next year. And so if you love YA literature and you want to join me for August, please let me know if you're interested in co-hosting with me. But for August, I selected Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope Perez. And Out of Darkness was published in 2016 by Carol Rhoda Lab. This book has been banned 23 times in one school year. In school year 21-22, it was banned 23 times. Like, seriously? It was the third most banned book in the U.S. that year. In U.S. schools. Like, that's crazy. 23 times. I wonder if each time the people who banned the book even read it. It is a love story between a Mexican American girl and an African American boy in the 1930s in an East Texas town. I read an interview with the author, and the author said that she grew up in this East Texas town and she was inspired by the real history of the town and the stories told. And so this book is actually inspired by history. It explores themes of racism, interracial ethnic love story, struggle, colorism, sexual abuse, and segregation. This is historical fiction, and it is also tagged as YA. And I believe that this was banned for sexual content. in the month of September. Another banned book. This is How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent by Julia Alvarez. Now, I really like Julia Alvarez. There are so many other books that I want to read by Julia Alvarez or reread, like In the Time of the Butterflies. I read that so long ago. I want to reread that one. But this book, How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent, is banned. I'll talk about the ban in a little bit. So, because it's a banned book, I decided to put it on my list for next year. How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent was published in 1991 by Algonquin. It was banned in a North Carolina, in North Carolina school libraries, plural, in 2007 due to sexual content and profane language. This book is told, the story is told in reverse chronological order, starting with present day for, the time period when it was written, and then going in reverse towards childhood. So we meet the main characters in adulthood, and then the story is told in reverse, and we end in the childhood. It's told from shifting perspectives. It spans 30 plus years in the lives of four sisters. It goes from adulthood in the US to childhood in the DR, the Dominican Republic. The book can be tagged as literary fiction, Bildungsroman, historical fiction, and has themes of immigration and migration. In the month of October, October is spooky season. October is all things horror. I definitely wanted horror vibes in the book club for October. And I couldn't decide. There were so many. There's Mariana Enriquez and all of the stuff she's written. She recently came out with a new short story collection, A Sunny Place for Shady People. I really want to read that. But I was so torn. I could not decide with all the wonderful choices I had. I ended up having my husband pick the book. And it was his pick, and he picked The Queen of the Cicadas by B. Castro. The Queen of the Cicadas was published in 2021 by Flame Tree Press. This book was nominated for Bram Stoker Award for Superior Achievement in a Novel. There are two timelines in the story. One is 2018, set in Texas, and the other one is in the 1950s, set in South Texas. That's all I'm going to say. With horror, I'm not going to give you too much. The title is The Queen of the Cicadas, B. Castro. If you want to go read more, you can, but I would caution you about spoilers. And this book can be tagged as horror, dark fiction, Mexican folklore, and the occult. So that's it. Now I know that for me at least, October is a busy reading month because you want to read all things horror. There's so many books to read. It's usually also Banned Books Week, and it's also Victober, and there's occult detectives, and there's all the, there's so much going on in the month of October. So I just want to say that this book is 224 pages. So I chose a short one. I'm glad. Well, my husband chose a short one, but I try to keep it shorter options because I know we're all reading a lot in the month of October. Now, next November is Nonfiction November, which I'm still doing Nonfiction November. And the book that I selected for book club is The Distance Between Us by Reyna Grande, published in 2012 by Simon & Schuster. This is a memoir. It is a story about a family's pursuit of the American dream. Again, the theme of the American dream I love. This book came on my radar a long time ago. It's been on my TBR for a long time. Super long time. Sometimes I avoid these kinds of books. I'm thinking this one, The Distance Between Us. I'm also thinking Solito. which was also a contender. And between the two, I ended up going with this one because this one is older. And also, what helped me decide was one of my faves, one of my local favorite authors, David Bowles, recommended this as an option to read instead of American Dirt. And I love that recommendation. So I was like, you know what? I need to read this book because David Bowles is recommending it as an option to read instead of. So um, this book is translated to the Spanish. So I think the original language is written in English, but there is a Spanish translation. If anybody reads in Spanish, it's La Distancia entre Nosotros. And this book can be tagged as immigration and memoir. And then lastly, December. There's so many books. Again, there's so many books. I didn't know which one to close the year with. So when I went to Dallas, I also went to a bookstore. I found a little gem of a bookstore called Who's Books. I love them. And on their table of new releases, they had When We Were Widows by Annette Chavez Macias. And actually, the bookseller recommended another one of Annette Chavez Macias's books, Big Chicas Don't Cry, which I'm going to pick up. I already got the audiobook and I'm going to read it sometime in the year, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I picked up the book at Who's Books. I picked it up. I didn't actually buy it right there and then, but I looked at it and I read the cover and I thought, this sounds like really good. And the cover kind of reminded me a little bit about Frankie and Grace and Frankie. Yeah, Grace and Frankie. And it's not a Grace and Frankie story, not a Quade, but the cover reminded me of a Grace and Frankie scene. So anyway, this book was published in 2024 by Amazon. And in the quote here is, in this heartfelt story about finding love in loss, 3 widows are forced under the same roof where they'll need to overcome grief, anger, and old secrets to put their family back together. This is, I believe, 3 generations of women, all widows, and they are unveiling family secrets. This is domestic fiction, this is women's fiction, and this is Mexican American fiction. And yeah, I really felt like I wanted to read this, and I'm excited to. I watched an interview with Annette Chavez Macias, and I loved her. I think she's a sweetheart, and I want to support her as an author. And sometimes authors go the self-publishing route. Sometimes they find a way, and in watching the interview and the fact that the bookseller recommended another one of her books made me really, really curious. So I'm excited to get to reading some of Annette Chavez Macias' work. And how to get these books. I'm always going to encourage you to use your library. If you want to buy the book, you can support your local indie. In your community, your local bookstore is always kind of like first place to go. But I did reach out to Who's Books because they were a big part of the inspiration for this. I was in Dallas when I had this inspiration. I went to their bookstore. I told them about it. They were really supportive. They were very encouraging. They were just great. And I sent them an email and I let them know I'm going to follow through with what I told y'all. I'm going to do this book club in 2025. And I'm going to let you watching this video know that they are aware and of the book club. And if you don't have a local indie that you support and you don't want to order bookshop.org, you want to order directly from an indie, I think Whose Books is great. They are a Latine owned indie bookstore. So I love that for them. I am so excited that they're in this world and that they're in my state, and it's a great way. I think if you want to support a local indie, they're a great one to support. So reach out to Whose Books. I'll go ahead and leave their link. They know about the Valeria Luiselli book, so they've been great to work with. They're amazing, great customer service. Yeah, that's it. Drop any questions that you might have in the comments. I did set up a Discord. I'll link that as well in the description box, and you can find me on Discord. I'll set up the reading, the monthly channels. I'm new to Discord on my own, so I'm gonna set up the chats in the Discord, and we'll get started with Valeria Luiselli's Lost Children Archive in January. And oh, if you watching this video, if if you're um if you're a booktuber and you want to read any of these, like buddy read any of these with me, like join in and like be like active in like reading, and maybe you want to do like a live stream with me on any of these books that I talked about, let me know, because one of my goals for 2025 is to learn how to do a live stream, and or like have a conversation. So most of the conversation will happen on Discord, but if there's any of you who are interested in chatting live on any of these books, like I would be down for that, and let me know what you think. So that is all. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to your comments and your participation in this reading adventure for 2025. Hasta la próxima.